Evolution and ecology. What I would tell you is that as we forge ahead, never deviating from our course for one moment's thought, feeling, or action, so could you. Humans generally seem not to know where they are going or why. If they did, what a powerhouse they would be. P. Diva though Dorothy McLean of Findhorn. The Animal Kingdom. The main difference between humans and animals lies in the kinds of consciousnesses they embody. Human beings have self-consciousness and an individual soul, whereas animals are guided mainly by instinct rather than by a reasoning mind, and they are connected to a group soul. It is possible for more highly evolved animals, usually those that have a domesticated nature, to evolve eventually into the human kingdom. This doorway was open prior to Atlantis, but it was closed at that time except for special cases. Sai Baba has said that his pet elephant, Sai Beta, will be a human in his next lifetime. If more people realized that animals can evolve into humans, they might treat animals with more respect. The treatment of animals in this society is atrocious. They are not looked at as the equals they truly are. Every animal is God visiting you in physical form. Eventually, over eons of time, the entire animal kingdom will move up to the lower levels of the human kingdom. Since animals have group souls, individualization is the portal of entry into the human kingdom. An animal can experience life as an individual in a pack of animals or as a loner, but it is usually through the interaction with humans as a domesticated animal that the goal of fully expressing as an individual is achieved. Animals do reincarnate. In one of the Casey readings, a woman asked if she had known her cat in a past life. The universal mind said, through Casey, that her cat had been with her in an incarnation in Egypt as a pet lion. The animal kingdom can be an emotional buffer for humankind. Animals are very sensitive to emotions. I'm sure you have seen how dogs will growl at certain people and not at others, depending on the vibration the human is radiating. Animals are able to absorb and, to a certain degree, transmute negative human emotions and imbalances. Wild animals are apparently able to take in the imbalance of massive group action such as war, famine, poverty, and mass death. The animals who serve as pets do the same thing for their individual human caretakers. Dogs and cats might diffuse an argument by asking for love and attention. Other times the companion animal reflects human emotions of a negative nature in its own behavior. Recently my sister went through an intense emotional crisis, and a week later her cat stopped eating for 4 days and almost died of thyroid failure. A spiritual teacher told her that her cat was running the crisis energy through her little body and it was much too powerful for her. As soon as my sister disconnected emotionally from her cat in regard to the matter, her cat recovered and was fine. Findhorn and the Animal Kingdom. There is a wonderful story about the animal kingdom concerning an occurrence during the first year at Findhorn. Because of all the compost that was being spread around, there were a great many earthworms. Earthworms are the favorite food of moles, and moles attacked the garden, building tunnels everywhere. Dorothy McLean decided to meditate on the situation and she tuned into a rather scary-looking great king mole with a crown on his head, sitting in an underground cavern. She proceeded to explain the situation to him and promised not to hurt his moles. She also suggested that he go to a neighboring area close by that was not used for gardening. Lo and behold, the moles left the garden. Several years later, when Findhorn was given the neighboring plot of land, there were the moles, exactly where she had asked them to go. Paralandra and the Animal Kingdom. There are a number of fascinating stories of a similar nature that occurred at Paralandra. As part of Michelle's desire for good soil, she put out a call for earthworms. Sure enough, when planting season came there were earthworms everywhere. The problem was that it was impossible to till the soil without killing the worms in the process. Michelle got very frustrated and declared out loud that she was going to have a 15-minute tea break, and when she returned she wanted the earthworms out of a particular area. When she returned, the earthworms were gone. Once she was finished working, she said, "You can come back now," and they did. Michelle also had a problem with moles. She spoke with the mole diva, and 30 minutes later she looked up and saw a whole band of over 100 moles heading toward the open field, exactly where she had asked them to go. She tried this one more time with cabbage worms. They had infested all her vegetables. She connected with the diva of the cabbage worms and requested that they leave all her vegetables except 4 special ones that were being planted specifically for their purposes. When she woke up in the morning, all the worms were gone except for the one plant at the end of each row that was specifically designated for them. Can you imagine what it would be like if all the farmers and gardeners of the world communicated with their plants? There would be no need for insecticides or pesticides. This applies even to homes. You can communicate with the diva of the ants or cockroaches or fleas and ask them not to enter the house. One interesting story on this subject. Sai Baba was asked if it was ever permissible to kill insects invading a house. Sai Baba said it was permissible and no karma would be incurred if the insects were invading the house, but karma would be incurred if they were killed outside. An even better method, however, would be to just tune in and ask them to leave. Why not? An ant, a flea, or a cockroach is God incarnate. Everything has its place in nature, and all kingdoms resound to the call of God. In the future, those people choosing to eat meat will receive their meat from cattlemen who put out a call to the overlighting diva of cattle and draw to themselves those cows that wish to serve humanity in this capacity. Eventually humankind will evolve beyond the eating of meat, but humanity is not at that level of evolution yet. Certain animals are willing to serve in this capacity as a service to humankind if it is part of the divine plan. The above-mentioned example would be an ideal way to facilitate the situation. The Wonderful Pig Story. One of my favorite stories of all time comes from a set of tapes made by John Robbins, who wrote Diet for a New America, a wonderful book I highly recommend. He tells a story about a pig farmer he visited while doing research for his book. He was invited to dinner but did not let on who he was. The pig farmer was running what might be called a pig concentration camp, in which the pigs were in small cages stacked one on top of the other in the most horrendous of conditions imaginable. Toward the end of dinner, the pig farmer intuitively picked up on who John Robbins was and slammed his fist on the table in anger. John Robbins was rather frightened. However, the man calmed down and then proceeded to talk. He explained that he was just trying to make a living by competing successfully with other pig farmers. He told how, as a young child, he had had a pet pig who was super smart. If I am not mistaken, the pig even saved him from drowning in a lake. One day the pig farmer's father told his son that they were going to have the pig for dinner. The boy was crushed. The father made him choose between the pig and himself. It was after that that the boy started to shut down emotionally. John Robbins sent a copy of his book to the pig farmer, who was so disgusted by the book that he actually threw it into the toilet. Meanwhile, he had been getting severe migraine headaches on a regular basis. Finally, his wife fished the book out of the toilet, dried it out, and said maybe if he read the whole book, his headaches would go away. He followed her advice, and some time after reading the book, the farmer decided to sell his pig farm. The headaches immediately stopped. John Robbins received this information in a letter but then didn't hear from the farmer for quite a while. About a year later he received a letter saying that not only had the farmer sold his pig concentration camp, but he had bought a new farm and opened a pig petting zoo where children from all over could learn about how smart pigs were and could pet them and play with them. The pigs had become his pets and were no longer locked up in cages. Needless to say, the pig farmer had never been happier or more at peace with himself. Some final comments on animals. Animals are the young brothers and sisters of humans. As the older siblings, humans can help them to evolve and become more spiritual. A domestic animal usually takes on the personality of its master. A vicious dog comes from a vicious owner. A dog owner who trains his animal to hunt and kill and be an attack dog is degrading the animal spiritually. Just the opposite should be occurring. People should be teaching animals to be of the Christ consciousness and to realize their godly nature to the fullest. For example, an unevolved dog might be rabid and biting everyone. A more highly evolved dog is happy and loves and serves his master to the best of his abilities. In truth, every encounter with an animal is a holy encounter, God meeting God. It is time for humankind to be of service to the mineral, plant, and animal kingdoms instead of looking upon those kingdoms as nothing more than objects of service to self. Native Americans and nature spirits. Native Americans have the best relationship with and understanding of nature. They love the flowers and they talk to their brother trees and to the running water. They talk to the spirit of mountain and even to blades of grass, for everything is alive with the light of God. The Great Spirit lives within every creature, plant, and stone. The American Indian would pray over an animal after it had to be killed and thank it for its service. This is nothing like the white man who would kill the buffalo just for sport. The Native American walks softly on Mother Earth. There is much the rest of humanity could learn from his example. Devas, humans, and the Earth Mother. The nature spirits work under the directorship of the Devas. In the Findhorn community, it was Dorothy McLean who had the gift of communicating with the Devas. In her first experience at the very start of the community, before it had even gotten off the ground, she made an attempt to speak with the garden pea and got an immediate response from the diva of the garden pea. The garden pea diva said, "I can speak to you, human. I am entirely directed by my work, which is set out and molded and which I merely bring to fruition, yet you have come straight to my awareness. My work is clear before me, to bring the force fields into manifestation regardless of obstacles, and there are many in this man-infested world. While the vegetable kingdom holds no grudges against those it feeds, man takes what he can as a matter of course, giving no thanks. This makes us strangely hostile. What I would tell you is that as we forge ahead, never deviating from our course for one moment's thought, feeling, or action, so could you. Humans generally seem not to know where they are going or why. If they did, what a powerhouse they would be. If they were on the straight course of what is to be done, we could cooperate with them. I have put across my meaning and bid you farewell. This is quite a message from a little pea diva. Its message is so very true. Humankind as a whole has been totally unappreciative of the work the devas and nature spirits do. Science has turned nature into a cold, mechanistic process completely devoid of spirituality. Science has become a nightmare of the soul and spirit of all things. The motto of science is that nothing exists except what you can see with your physical eyes and sense with your other physical senses. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The P diva called the world man-infested. That reminds me of a movie called Emerald Forest, about a rainforest in South America. The Indian tribe living there called white people, the termite people, because of the way they were destroying the forests. Humankind has lived upon the earth as a parasite, destroying the forests and polluting the air, the rivers, the lakes, and the oceans. He is destroying the ozone layer, and the fossil fuels are causing a greenhouse effect. He is using up the natural resources. He is junking up space with satellites and the Earth with nuclear waste he doesn't know what to do with. Man has been a cancer to the Earth Mother. His selfishness, greed, and self-centeredness will lead to his destruction if he doesn't change his ways. Besides the violence he has perpetrated upon the Earth Mother, Pan, the Devas, and the nature spirits, there has been a complete and total lack of appreciation for all these beings have done for humanity. Vimus has said that the Earth Mother herself has actually had to pull away from humanity because of the injuries she has suffered. There has been a long-standing pattern of lack of integration and cooperation among the seven kingdoms. As the human kingdom awakens to the kingdom of souls, its members will also awaken to the beautiful kingdoms of minerals, plants, and animals and will cease the atrocities now perpetrated on animals in the name of science, luxury, sport, and greed, realizing that anything done to an animal is done to God, for an animal is God. The planet's surface is the skin of the Earth Mother, but as has been covered up with cement so that the Earth can't breathe. The destroying of the rainforests is causing an oxygen imbalance across the entire planet. The planet has been scarred by strip mining and ripped by the explosion of nuclear bombs beneath her surface. Dwal Kul has said that every time a nuclear bomb is detonated beneath the surface, an earthquake occurs somewhere on the globe. All I can say is that the Earth Mother, Pan, the Devas, and the nature spirits must be very forgiving and loving beings to carry on as valiantly as they have for the past 10 million years, even though they have been physically, emotionally, and mentally violated. The United States finally has a vice president, Al Gore, and a president, Bill Clinton, who are advocates of the environment. Vimas has said that on July 1, 1986, a new communicative link was set up among the 5 kingdoms: mineral, plant, animal, human, and soul. The human kingdom began to move beyond its first steps. It is interesting that around that time Earth Day was instituted and the ozone layer, greenhouse effect, and rainforest controversies came to the public awareness. The harmonic convergence and hands across America occurred. It does seem that a small shift has taken place. The Secret Life of Trees. In my research for this chapter I came across a wonderful little book called Secrets from the Lives of Trees, by Jeffrey Golitz. Jeffrey developed a spiritual relationship with trees that allowed him to communicate with them and with the nature spirits that work with them. I would like to quote a section of his book about the role trees play on Earth that is the channeling of a spirit called Good Friend who often helped in the research. Their main purpose on the planet is to help all beings evolve to a higher consciousness. Trees have a non-threatening energy for humans to pick up on, as are many things in nature, like plants, flowers, and meadows. They bring to the world peace and tranquility. Wood, food, and beauty are then extras within the subpurpose of a tree. The energy they give out goes indiscriminately toward everyone. Trees do not have what you would call a learning or growing pattern of right or wrong. They are more in harmony with the planet and would not be able to take a left-hand turn, as humans can. Trees provide essence levels of energy for the planet to use. There is also a wisdom band in trees because they have been on the planet much longer than humans. They hold a higher vibration of the truth. Throughout the ages, trees have been used as spots for higher teachings. Buddha, Jesus, and many others held their classrooms in a grove of trees. A tree puts out a higher, clearer vibration which enables people to receive more clarity. Even in the other worlds, there are what you would call etheric trees that many teachings are given under. The following is a very short quote from the same book on the role of nature spirits. Because trees are extremely important to the planet, there are a lot of spirits working with them. Just as trees have light coming from their essence band on the other side, the nature spirits have a different band of energy sent down to them, which they put through their system and adapt for the tree's use. They supplement the tree's energies that Earth's negativity would otherwise alter. In a city, devas help the trees tremendously, let's say in a city park, by putting out positive energy. As devas work with trees, plants, or whatever job they have, they evolve. The Mineral Kingdom. Everything in the universe is in a state of evolution, including the Mineral Kingdom. Again, the gnomes are the elemental beings who work specifically with the Mineral Kingdom. The following chart, indicating the hierarchy of minerals and gemstones, was channeled by Vimas through the Tibetan Foundation. Hierarchy of minerals and gemstones. People have a hard time realizing that minerals are alive. The signature of life in the Mineral Kingdom is the crystalline formation the gnomes have created. Moreover, there are also dead minerals. When a stone is quarried from its source, its vital life force is cut off. The gemstone is still evolving and growing while it is in its natural rock formation. That is not to say that a rock should never be cut from a quarry, but, like a cut flower, it is no longer a living rock. Fairies sometimes accompany a freshly cut flower to its new home, and the same is true of gemstones. Sometimes nature spirits will accompany the gemstone you wear on your hand. In reality, the mineral kingdom might be the most important to life of all the kingdoms. It makes up the crust of the earth upon which humans and animals live. The mineral kingdom also provides the basic source of nutrients for the three higher kingdoms, in that plants are rooted in mineral soil, and plants then nourish the physical bodies of both human and animal life, animals then being a food source for the human kingdom as well. Without the mineral kingdom, the other three kingdoms could not survive on Earth. In the evolutionary process, each kingdom acts as the mother from which the succeeding ones are born. The offspring thus depend upon and draw life and sustenance from the preceding kingdom from which it has sprung. The mineral kingdom is spirit at its densest form of vibration. Minerals and crystals have a profoundly healing effect on the human body and on a garden, too, for that matter. It is time to appreciate the great service the mineral kingdom renders humanity. The Gemstone Guardians. The best book I have ever read regarding the missions, purposes, effects, and therapeutic applications of gemstones is a wonderful book called Gifts of the Gemstone Guardians by Ginny Katz. In a state of meditation one night, she was taken to meet a group of beings known as the Gemstone Guardians. Each Gemstone Guardian's duty is to fulfill the purpose of the particular gemstone it has charge over and to maintain its effects. In recent times, these Gemstone Guardians have been given a new responsibility and duty: to teach humans the correct way to use gemstones for therapeutic purposes. Ginny and her husband, Michael, had been working with gemstones for more than 10 years in their business and had studied their healing properties extensively. Since the existing knowledge available on Earth concerning gemstones was limited and very general in nature, Ginny was given the spiritual assignment at the first meeting with the Gemstone Guardians in meditation to interview each of them and bring forth the new information on gemstones straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. For example, who would know more about the therapeutic uses of an emerald than the actual Emerald Gemstone Guardian? Michael was put in charge of asking questions of the Gemstone Guardians. They said stones were divided into 3 groups: the gemstones, the guardians of the earth stones, the guardians of the ocean stones. The first interview was with the Gemstone Guardian of quartz. When she first saw him, he was wrapped in a white cape that radiated a soft light. He proceeded to unwrap his arms and open his cape to reveal his body, which was made of clear quartz crystal. Ginny blinked her eyes and his body changed into that of a human about 30 years old with blonde hair. He was dressed in soft white pants and a shirt. Thus the first interview began. In the book she tells of her experiences in interviewing the Gemstone Guardians of quartz, lavender, aventurine, emerald, rose quartz, ruby, rhodochrosite, amethyst, purple rainbow fluorite, sapphire, indigo, carnelian, citrine, aquamarine, green tourmaline, rubellite, sodalite, leopardskin jasper, poppy jasper, bloodstone, ivorite, opal, light, riverstone, rhodonite, malachite, lapis lazuli, onyx, mother of pearl, pearl, and coral. At the end of all the interviews she met with the overseer of the Gemstone Guardians. The overseer stressed the importance of using only the finest quality gemstones for therapeutic purposes. She explained that the average commercial quality gemstones commonly available would not have the powerful effects described by the Guardians. Ginny and Michael Katz do sell therapeutic quality gemstones which can be obtained by writing them. After reading Ginny's book, I was extremely impressed. I am not going to describe the qualities of each gemstone, for Ginny has done this far better than I could. My purpose is to introduce you to the Gemstone Guardians and guide you to this wonderful book. The Gemstone Guardians will work with you personally in your own self-healing work if they are called in any sincere manner. 38. The Huna Teachings. The Huna teachings are the clearest form of psychology and religion on the planet. The Universal Mind through Paul Solomon. I was first exposed to the Huna teachings by Paul Solomon, who is a channel for the Universal Mind and whom people call the next Edgar Cayce. In Paul's channelings, the Universal Mind has said that the clearest form of psychology and religion on the planet are the Huna teachings of Hawaii. I immediately went out and bought everything I could find about the Huna teachings. The following is the essence of Huna. An astonishing point I became aware of in my research for this book is that the Egyptian teachings involved in becoming initiated into the order of Melchizedek during the Third Dynasty were almost word for word the same as the Huna teachings of Hawaii. The psychology and teachings of Huna. The Huna teachings are an ancient secret science that has come to the West through the work of Max Freedom Long. Long initially learned about the teachings of Huna from William Tufts Brigham, who had spent 40 years living in Hawaii, trying to understand the secret of the Huna teachings. He had been able to obtain much information, but he had never been able to get to the core of the teachings. Long had heard of Brigham's interest in Huna and searched him out. Mr. Brigham knew after a short chat that at the age of 82, he had found the man who would carry on his study and his search for the substance of the Huna teachings that he had been unable to find. Max Freedom Long studied the work of Brigham and did carry on his work, but he came across the same stumbling block that Brigham had encountered. The Huna teachings were an ancient tradition that had been passed on by word of mouth. Every time Max Freedom Long made an effort to understand Huna, he was shunned. The few kahunas left in Hawaii would not speak to him. For many years he was stuck at this impasse. Then in 1935 he had a breakthrough. Upon waking from sleep, he had the insight to make a fresh translation of the recorded chants and prayers based on the root words. The Hawaiian language consists of long words built from short root words. The new translation was the key that unlocked the secret of how the kahunas performed their seemingly magical feats. Max Freedom Long spent the next 40 years studying and working with the Huna teachings, until his death in 1971. It was at that time that the apprenticeship passed to Dr. E. Otha Wingo. It is Mr. Wingo who is head of the Huna Research Associates and who is the author of the 12-lesson Huna correspondence course. The correspondence course teaches the practical application of the Huna teachings, and I have found it to be quite helpful. The following presentation, then, is based on the teachings of Huna as understood by Max Freedom Long and Dr. E. Otha Wingo. It is their interpretations I will refer to in this chapter as the Huna teachings. The essence of the Huna teachings is that the human being is made up of three selves, or minds. They can most easily be called the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the superconscious mind. The kahunas call the conscious mind the uhane, or middle self. This middle self is the part of a human that is conscious of its own existence and has the ability to reason. It has also been given free will to create as it pleases, along with the low self. The subconscious mind is called the unihipili, or low self. It is the part of the human that presents the unconscious material to the conscious mind so it may reason for or against it. The low self is the storehouse of all memory and the seat of the emotions. Its form of mentation is considered to be that of animal-level reasoning. The term low has no reference to rank or importance, only to the fact that it is below the level of consciousness of the middle self and to the fact that its bodily center is in the solar plexus rather than in the head. The third part is the high self, called the amakua by the kahunas. The high self is the older, utterly trustworthy parental self of spirit. This higher self lives at a higher plane of consciousness outside of the physical body. It will not intervene in the affairs of life unless asked to do so. This is understood to be a cosmic law the high self must adhere to. The high self has a higher form of mentation than the middle and low selves have. It is the part that directs dreams, intuitions, and premonitions through the subconscious self. Huna teaches that it is the high self that constructs your future from the thoughts, hopes, and fears of the middle and low selves. The high self is supposed to be able to see into the future as far as your thoughts have been crystallized. As thoughts change daily in the lives of the middle and low selves, so does the future change, according to Huna teachings. Huna also teaches that communication with the high self occurs quite naturally during sleep. It is in that contact that most of the thoughts of the day are supposedly averaged by the high self and used, by some mysterious mechanism, to materialize conditions in the future. In the Huna teachings, each of the three selves has its proper role to perform in the life of each individual. Life, health, and happiness have to do with the integration, blending, and harmonizing of these three selves. The other basic teaching of Huna is that people are made up of 10 basic elements. To understand this concept, it is necessary to understand the triad of mind-force-matter. I have already mentioned the 3 levels of mind: subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. It is also believed that the basic vital force, or energy, in a person's body is divided into 3 voltages. The lowest voltage is that of the lower, or subconscious, self. This same vital force, when used by the middle self, or conscious mind, is thought to be raised to a higher voltage. In the same way, when the vital force is raised to the level of consciousness of the high self, it is raised again to an even higher voltage. The basic vital force of a person changes according to which self is using that energy. The last element of this triad is that of matter. Huna teaches that each of the 3 selves has a shadow body, or etheric body. The shadow bodies are metaphysical bodies that are thought to be exact duplicates of everything that exists in the physical world. It is these energetic molds that hold all physical form together. Everything that has ever been created has a shadow body. The shadow body of the low self is said to be a mold of every tissue of the physical body. The low self's shadow body, hence, looks exactly like the physical body except that it is metaphysical in form. Huna teaches that all memory is stored in this shadow body of the low self. The shadow body of the middle self is an energy body in the region of the physical head. The low and middle selves, hence, interpenetrate the physical body with their shadow bodies. The high self has a shadow body also, but it does not interpenetrate the physical body. The high self is connected to the low self by an energy cord. This energy cord has been called the silver cord in other mystical teachings. I have so far mentioned 9 elements. The 10th element is the physical body, which is the vehicle, or instrument, in which the low self and middle self operate and live. Huna teaches that the high self expresses all the divine qualities: compassion, patience, love, forgiveness. It is the ideal to which the middle self is to aspire. It is a step advanced in the mental powers and creative abilities. The high self is also considered to be a combined community of spirits. High selves are considered to be individual in identity and yet one with all other high selves at the same time. The high self is also considered to be a perfect blending of masculine and feminine, an androgynous self. The shadow bodies of the 3 selves are made of a substance called Akka. Akka has a sticky and elastic quality to it and can stretch without breaking. This substance is also a perfect carrier and conductor of vital force. According to Huna teachings, the lower self's shadow body is capable of changing shapes temporarily or permanently to form a connecting thread between the middle self and the high self. If you have a good relationship and a strong rapport with your low and high selves, you have developed these Akka threads into Akka cords. It is upon these Akka threads and cords that vital force and thought forms travel. Every time you contact your low self, your high self, any object, or any person in the world, you are sending out Akka threads. When contact is made between 2 persons, a long sticky thread is drawn between them. Further contact adds other Akka threads, and they become braided together into an Akka cord. An Akka cord results in a strong rapport between the 2 individuals. Telepathic communication, according to Huna, has to do with the traveling of vital force and thought forms along Akka cords. This telepathic sending of thought forms and vital force can occur among the middle, low, and high selves and between 2 people who have a strong Akka cord connection. Every thought you think has a shadow body around it, also. As a thought is formed, it is fastened by a thread of akka to the thought threads that came before it. This concept is the explanation for the association of ideas which is acknowledged by modern psychology. In other words, a given thought attracts the threads of all similar thoughts. Another extremely important aspect of the Huna teachings is the importance of mana, or vital force. Mana is the basic energy in all things. Huna teaches that mana is taken from food and air by the low self and stored in the low self's shadow body. This vital force in the lower self's shadow body can be used for anything the middle self wants. When used by the middle self, the mana is raised from the shadow body of the lower self to the physical head region of the middle self, and in the process of being raised is changed in some subtle way. This force, when raised, is called the will by modern psychology. When the middle self does not use this willpower as it should, the lower self acts out and flits from one activity to another without carrying out any suggestion or command effectively. The low, or subconscious, self is thought to be like a child. It needs to be loved, and it needs to be treated firmly and in a disciplined manner. A real physical child, if spoiled and not given any discipline, will act out. It is the same with the lower self. That is why it is essential that the middle self raise the mana for use as willpower. The middle self is the reasoning mind, which is like the parent of the low self, just as the high self is the parent of the middle self. The three selves are gradations of consciousness. The Kahunas believe that everything in the universe is in a state of evolution, including the elements, plants, insects, animals, low selves, middle selves, and high selves. They see the entire universe in gradations of consciousness. The Kahunas believe that God is a triune being, just as people are triune beings. They believe that God is a trinity of levels of spirit. They term these three levels Ku, Cain, and Kanaloa. This concept of God correlates with that of other religions such as Christianity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The Kahunas believe that the process of evolution is one of moving through these levels of consciousness back to eventual at one ment with God the Creator, or Ku. Making prayers to the high self is similar to the process that is used between the low self and middle self. Once the middle self has raised the vital force from the shadow body of the low self to use as will, it can do whatever it wants to do with that energy. Such will can be used for physical exercise or controlling the lower self or thinking or praying or anything else. The process of prayer to the high self involves raising the vital force, or mana, up from the middle self to the next voltage. The aspect that is unique to the Huna teachings is that it is the low self that takes the prayer to the high self. If the low self has a complex of sin, guilt, unworthiness, or doubt, it will not deliver the prayer. The low self uses the mana the middle self has raised and sends that vital force up the akka cord with the prayer. Huna teaches that the high self cannot manifest a prayer unless it receives the needed mana from the middle and low selves. Thus, it is essential, according to Huna teaching, to accumulate a surcharge of vital force before beginning to pray to the high self. A great deal of emphasis is given in the Huna teachings to how this is done. As I mentioned before, a certain amount of vital force is created from the food you eat and the air you breathe. Huna teaches a number of other ways to accumulate extra energy. Asking and commanding the low self to build up a surcharge of vital force for use in prayer. Physical exercise. Deep breathing, which causes more blood sugar to be burned, the main method. Postures. Nutritious food. Visualizing vital force rising like a fountain of water from the base of the spine up through the top of the head. Holding a mental attitude of gaining personal power and strength, such as the attitude you would maintain when preparing for a race. Proper sleep and rest. Affirmations spoken out loud, such as, "The universal life force is flowing into me now. I feel it." In addition to the need for a surcharge of mana, there is the need for the clearing of the path. Clearing the path means removing all thought forms that could sabotage the prayer. such thought forms can occur in the conscious or the subconscious mind. For example, if you make a prayer for healing and then say you don't think it's going to work, then you are obviously sabotaging your efforts with antithetical thought forms. It can also happen that your conscious mind is behind the prayer, but your subconscious mind is not. The low self might deliver the prayer but ruin it with thought forms of doubt or fear. Another possibility is that the low self will refuse to deliver the prayer at all because of its fixations on guilt and unworthiness. The relationship between the middle self and the low self is, hence, essential before you can even get the high self effectively involved. Jshua teaches that the only sin that exists is that of hurting another person. It is not possible to sin against God or the high self. To clear the path, you must make amends, or balance out the hurts that were inflicted upon another. This can be done in an infinite number of ways as long as the low self is convinced, along with the middle self, that amends have been made. Some kind of physical act or stimulus is usually most convincing to the low self. Any act that is perceived as a sacrifice or a service to others can help to balance out guilt complexes and feelings of unworthiness. The middle self and low self must also be trained to know what truly is sinful as opposed to what is considered sinful by the dogma of traditional religion. Once the clearing of the path has been achieved, the low self can send the accumulated mana and thought form prayers right up the Aka cord, the Antakarana, in Hindu terminology, to the high self. The last step in the process is to create a proper thought form prayer. Jshua teaches that thoughts are like seeds. In some strange and unknown way, the high self uses the thoughts you think to create your future. The action of prayer is a way of sending new thought forms to the high self in order to materialize a desired outcome on the earth plane. In making prayers, the kahunas stress the importance of preparing very carefully the thought form seeds you wish to create. The one rule is that what you ask for not hurt others and that it be a reasonable request for something that is sincerely needed for yourself or for others. It is suggested that the exact wording of the prayer be written out on paper so a precise picture of what is desired can be visualized. It is also essential that the prayer be worded in positive rather than negative language. Jshua teaches that a prayer for healing should be worded in a way that describes the desired result as opposed to mentioning the ailment. For example, a poor prayer, according to Jshua, would be, "Heal my injured leg." Mentioning the injured leg is presenting a negative thought form. A better way to phrase the prayer is, "I ask that my leg be healed so that I may run and jump and walk to my heart's content, with perfect ease and balance and comfort." In this example, the thought form does not mention the injury but, rather, visualizes the healed result. The visualization of the desired thought form is a way of strengthening the seed thoughts that are sent to the high self. In summary, the Jshua prayer method begins with clearing the path, removing any negative thought forms in the middle and low selves that would prevent the low self from taking the thought form prayer to the high self. Step 2 is the creation of the exact thought form prayer, including writing it out on paper and developing a strong visualization of the result. Step 3 is the building up of an accumulation of vital force in the shadow body of the lower self for the use of the middle self when the prayer action begins. When these 3 steps have been accomplished, the prayer is formed by saying it aloud 3 times over, using your will to impress the prayer on your low self and to build strong thought form clusters. Once it has been stated in this way, the prayer is held in mind, and the low self is ordered to reach out and take it to the high self, the soul. When an answering electric tingle is felt, the prayer is recalled or spoken aloud again so that it can be sent to the high self with the extra supply of vital force needed to materialize the thought forms of the prayer into the present or the future. The closing portion of the prayer should be made definite. Otherwise there is the danger of mixing a jumble of contaminated thoughts into the prepared thought form. The kahunas end their prayers with these words, "The prayer takes flight. Let the rain of blessings fall." This is an important statement since the high self will Step 3 is the building up of an accumulation of vital force in the shadow body of the lower self for the use of the middle self when the prayer action begins. When these 3 steps have been accomplished, the prayer is formed by saying it aloud 3 times over, using your will to impress the prayer on your low self and to build strong thought form clusters. Once it has been stated in this way, the prayer is held in mind, and the low self is ordered to reach out and take it to the high self, the soul. When an answering electric tingle is felt, the prayer is recalled or spoken aloud again so that it can be sent to the high self with the extra supply of vital force needed to materialize the thought forms of the prayer into the present or the future. The closing portion of the prayer should be made definite. Otherwise, there is the danger of mixing a jumble of contaminated thoughts into the prepared thought form. The kahunas end their prayers with these words, "The prayer takes flight. Let the rain of blessings fall." This is an important statement since the high self will manifest only what it is asked to manifest. "Let the rain of blessings fall" is the request that the prayer be answered. The formal ending of a prayer can be delayed 15 seconds to a minute to allow the low self to do its work of sending the vital force and thought form prayer up the Akka chord. During this time it is essential that the middle self relax so as to avoid calling the low self immediately back to begin another task. Once the prayer has been completed, it should be released to the keeping of the high self. All that is needed then on the part of the middle and low selves is faith and trust that the prayer will be answered. Any thought other than this would sabotage the prayer procedure. How the prayer will be answered should be left to the workings of the high self. It is extremely important at that point, according to Huna teachings, for the middle self, you, the conscious personality who has made the request, to do everything humanly possible to help manifest the prayer. Just because a prayer has been made doesn't mean you can just go sit in your room and wait for the results to manifest. The middle and low selves must continue to do their part to manifest the prayer, while avoiding negative thinking. It is also important that you not speak about the prayer with anyone who would suggest any doubt or negativity about the manifestation of the prayer. Huna teaches that if a prayer is made for the healing of another, that individual must be cleansed of all negative complexes as a preliminary act. Otherwise his low self will prevent the healing. The last point in this discussion of the Huna prayer method is that you must be prepared to make the prayer action in the exact same manner daily until the desired result is accomplished. The phenomenon of instant healing by the high self, according to Huna, involves the shadow, or etheric, body of the low self. As stated before, the shadow body of the low self is a perfect metaphysical mold of the physical body. A bone can break in the physical body, but the blueprint, or perfect mold, in the etheric will not be affected. In the process of instant healing, the mold is emptied of broken or diseased tissues and is refilled with basic substances that conform to the uninjured mold. This is done by the high self in some unknown manner. Once it has been asked for, the path has been cleared, and the needed vital force to make the change has been provided. Huna teaches that the same process is what accounts for the phenomenon of apports. This usually refers to the moving of physical objects over long distances by discarnate spirits. The explanation the Huna teaching gives is that the discarnate spirit somehow obtains an accumulation of extra vital force and uses it to dematerialize the physical object into its etheric, or shadow, form, then moving the object to the desired place and materializing it back into physicality. Huna teaches that it is also possible for the high self to control such things as the weather, animals, insects, plant life, indeed, anything on this third-dimensional plane of reality. The presence of spirits at a séance is thought to occur because the spirit uses the vital force of the medium and of the group to form itself into denser matter. There is an interesting note about vital force and its uses by kahunas that has to do with times of war in Hawaii. A kahuna would take a stick and fill it full of vital force. When he threw the stick at the oncoming enemy, the person it hit would be knocked immediately unconscious. The process of psychometry, according to Huna, involves ordering the low self to follow the Akka threads of an object back to its owner. The owner can be on the other side of the world or on the astral plane. It apparently does not matter to the low self. The thoughts and memories and appearances of the person are noted and then brought back and given to the middle self. Since the low self's shadow body is a duplicate of the physical body, the low self, hence, has 5 inner senses, just as the physical body has 5 outer senses. The low self can be trained to go and get information that it would be impossible for the middle self to get. The phenomenon of astral travel occurs when the low self or the low self and the middle self leave the physical body for a period of time and travel in the astral frequency. The Hunas taught that all people do this every night in their sleep even though they don't remember it when they wake up. It was believed that after physical death, a person would create a thought-form world, or purgatory, in which he would experience, as in a dream, all events and occurrences he needed to live out. The last point I would like to discuss in relationship to Huna is the concept of normal living. The integration of the 3 selves was the goal, but the Kahunas believed that each living thing was in its intended stage of evolution and that there was sufficient time for all to grow upward. They believed that family life was good and that all normal living was good. They did not preach a doctrine of asceticism or self-denial. They believed that the low self was just as important in the workings of life as was the high self. They believed that God could not be reached by going straight up but rather by living properly, normally, and in brotherhood on the earth.